It is my distinct honor to introduce Shanee, one of our earth-moving volunteers who advocates with deep compassion, vigilance, and a very fine capability for her two CASE children. You can read Shanee's bio in the program to learn more about this remarkable woman. And now let me bring her up to share her witness about the power of CASA advocacy. Shanee?
Good evening, everyone. There can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. Nelson Mandela said these words in May 1995, barely a year into his historic presidency as the first truly democratically elected president in South Africa. Despite the many challenges that awaited him, Mandela instinctively knew that addressing the plight of the children in his fragile country was the key to a successful future. To me, being a court-appointed special advocate means that I, too, believe that meeting the needs of children is paramount to our society's success. I grew up in a suburb outside of Philly, raised on cheesesteaks and tasty cakes, in a loving and nurturing home. As a child, I was exposed to the arts, music, Christianity, and service to others. It was instilled in me from an early age to treat everyone with dignity and respect, and that we were all equal in the eyes of God. But like many of the children that CASA works with, my childhood also had a dark side. I was a victim of sexual abuse by a male family member over a number of years. The rose-colored glasses of the world I was nurtured in did not teach me about good touch, bad touch, or that those we know can sometimes do us more harm than those we don't. Like many survivors of childhood abuse, I did not really comprehend the extent of my trauma until I was much older. My mental health began to decline, and panic attacks and trips to my guidance counselor and school psychologist became permanent fixtures in my life. But when I got to college, something important happened. I discovered the communications department and the journalism program. For the first time in my life, I truly began to understand the power of words, and that mine could be used to change not only my own situation, but potentially someone else's too. I became interested in CASA because their work focuses on a population that I know from personal experience is incredibly vulnerable and too often voiceless. I became involved with CASA because they support what is in the best interest of the child, above any and all else. Being a court-appointed special advocate is both humbling and very daunting. You hold in your heart the promise that you will do everything you can to help this child, but you store in your mind the knowledge that you will face many challenges along the way. I have been a CASA for a little over a year, and perhaps the fact that my case was officially assigned to me on October 31st was a premonition that things are never quite what they seem. I have two children that I work with, an 8-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Both children have been in the care of their resource parent for the past 2 years, and when I first met this family, I naively thought that I would not be with them very long. The children's resource parent had been taking care of them for the past 2 years. She had no major issues with either child, and she was eager to adopt both of them and give them a permanent home. However, there is not always a black and white picture of what is best for a child. In January 2015, I attended a permanency hearing to determine whether their birth mother's parental rights would be terminated. In this case, their mother does not have a substance abuse disorder, nor has she ever been physically abusive towards them. She has an intellectual disability and untreated mental illness that makes it difficult or impossible for her to safely raise her children. I cried as I heard the psychologist solemnly give testimony that despite any interventions the state might put in place for her, their mother did not possess the mental capacity to adequately care for two children. Still, an appeal was filed, and with the question of parental rights hanging in the balance, there could be no further talk of adoption or other plans for the future. Hearing these words in court was the first time I realized the gravity of our work as CASA advocates. Where will these children live? Will they succeed in school? Whose family are they a part of? I knew that as a CASA advocate, I could help. I could make a positive difference in their lives. For example, one thing I'm really proud of was helping to get speech therapy services for the youngest child. Because both his mother and older sister had intellectual disabilities, very little conversation took place in his early development, and he had no speech patterns to mimic. I requested services twice at his old school where he was declined, and then again at his new school where his paperwork was misplaced when he started kindergarten. Finally, he was evaluated by a speech pathologist and services were put in place. It really surprised me how powerful it can be when there's someone to double check or make a simple follow-up call. That might be all it takes to help a child get on the right track. As a CASA advocate, we knock on doors, we send emails, we make phone calls. We talk with the child study team, email with the teachers, and visit with the child and their resource family. And all those little efforts add up to potentially life-changing events in a child's life. Court-appointed special advocates are charged with using our head and our hearts to hold up the ideal that a child, just like anyone else, deserves to have a seat at the table and a voice in the conversation. Every community, every person should want to support the work that CASA does because children really are our future. There are many ways to help. But whatever you do, do it in love and with the affirmation that any small act of kindness does indeed give some hurting child back their voice. Thank you.